Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another session from the old Wise Asylum. I have to say, I'm a bit knackered me at the moment. I didn't really get much sleep last night. So my apologies if I look a bit doped up, but I can assure you it's nothing to do with the magic. That's not come back, so. But yeah, I'm just feeling a bit woozy. So, how's your week been? Busy as mine? Mine's been mad. So I got the acceptance certificates off this week to 4 amigos in the old council. Now, interesting. It's very interesting. As I said, before we were playing a bit of poker and chess. Now we're playing chess. So there's no smoke screen, poker facing. It's just bump. And you're on the right track when the slick that they've employed is trying to copy you badly, very, very badly, of course, but you're on the right game. So interesting, indeed, and we can prepare for court. So that's all groovy and good, and I'm glad that them are done because they don't have to take some effort, just going through it and keep going through it, keep changing it, keep adding to it, keep making sure it flows, it's fluent. Now I did make one mistake in it, and so of course an amendment notice has had to accompany it. So see, that's another thing, you get word blind after. I don't know whether it happens to you, but when you're stuck, your face is stuck in words all the time, you get a bit word blind and you miss things, you can't see things properly, and it can get a little bit So you've got to put it down, leave it, and then come back to it with fresh eyes. But even then, you can miss things. And I just missed one date I had wrong, which I suppose you could say, well, it's just no, it doesn't. It matters in these kind of games. It matters, Any mistakes has to be corrected. So an amendment notice is what you jump in there and make things right. So other than that. A very satisfying weekend in the sense that that's done. It's like giving birth to a baby, it's good. So I'm glad that that's done. And a lot of folks have been telling me today by email and all sorts that the website got a bit of an earning on the old Richard Forbes gig. Well, that's rather groovy. So, and a very good piece as well, I might add, that he's chosen to put up there, which, if folks can start to grasp the immensity of that situation, i.e. when government, all departments become corporations, then people are going to be better armed to see that, there's the problem. The next move, of course, is for them to start to reckon with the fact that, are you a man, or are you man, or are you person? And once you've worked that out, it's, well, how do you continue to be man while administrating or being the executive for the person? And which person? Natural person or legal person? And as you lot know out there, there's a lot to know, there's a lot to take in because it's so well lured. It's like peeling an onion. Or the Russian dolls that never end. It's ridiculous, but, and it's a bloody good but, it's paying off. I mean, the stuff now that we are starting to really pull together outside of the court case, but because the court case has certainly helped me to sort of streamline the communication, but more importantly, the grasp on the issue. It's all good as we head into spring, so I'm quite excited by the fact that things are looking good, that it's potent, very, very potent, and okay, we're using it against the council tax presently, but no. This carries for everything. And getting into them adhesion contracts has been very interesting, which of course we've only pulled out the hat at the last minute. We don't want them to know what we're up to right early on. And now that it's out of the private, which is what it was in all the communications, they've changed the case. It's a brand new case. Thinking they could get rid of everything from before. Well, that's not going to work. Everything's brand new again. So it's jolly groovy and interesting. So it's going to be very interesting when we get to March. But some of the things that are being pulled out of the hat at the moment are quite profound. Profound indeed in relation to how you would actually deal with it. You can stop the court. You can, even today there's some information that's come to mind that I still have to look at properly, but you can pretty much or potentially quash this just by communicating with the prosecution. So that remains to be seen, and of course if that's the case then I'm going to use it and obviously spill the beans, because now we're in the public. Now this case is shifted entirely into the public for public record. So there we are. This, you know, and of course the other stuff's private, they didn't take it on, so it doesn't really matter anyway. We can go through all that down the line. So this year I'm going to be able to show you some interesting concepts. But the blind adhesion contracts are a serious piece of kit to pull out of the hat, because that is exactly what they're depending on. Postcode, land registry, all these blind adhesion contracts, from shifting you from inhabitant to resident without an agreed contract in place for that. No agreed contract for them to share your data, you know, and breach of GDPR. All these, once you start to unpick these blind adhesion contracts, then you're actually, you're removing the veil completely, like Wizard of Oz. There they are at the back there, just some freak talking big, and they've wrapped themselves in this nonsense that we're not supposed to see. So it has been an exceptionally interesting, almost 12 months now. You know, it's almost been a 12-month gig. I think it's a year today since I nearly died, and of course came off the magic cabbage, so it was well worth the effort. I don't really care. I don't mind nearly dying if it serves the purpose, or at least a purpose. So 12 months off the magic cabbage. So we're celebrating. It's the annual celebration of me getting off the magic cabbage after 35 years. What can I say? Yeah, so that's good too. It's all groovy. Now, I've put together, so last night and all day today, it's been quite to be honest, it took a little bit longer than I thought. Now, you know, we've all talked about the Noachide, we've talked about all the law, so anybody now that you're into the law, you have an understanding of a grasp on law, you have a grasp on the fact that we've been shafted somewhere down the line. Well, we got shafted completely. I would say that basically, First World War, that really started to annihilate it. 1933, the bankruptcies, when they put up as the collateral for the fiat and took us off the gold standard. Then you've got the Second World War. Previous to that, they created the social system, the NHS, all this garbage that got you fixed onto Rockefeller synthetic. And then launched it straight after World War II. Then we had the 60s where, you know, I've said before, I'm quite convinced that actually what they did is dosed everybody in that generation in the 60s, whether they liked it or not, with noxious substances. that took them completely off track, and they've never been the same since. Now, when it gets to monarchies, we're talking about Edward VII, the man that changed the mandate of Freemasonry, the massive influx of all these pogrom Russians that came from the 1860s right up to the 1915 where it got stopped with Act of Parliament. So there's no denying that happened. It was also going on in America. The Schofield Bible, which changed the overall thesis of the Reformed Church, didn't get picked up here. Got picked up in America because they brung all the Ivy League students through Cecil Hotel and pretty much programmed them to the Schofield Bible. Aristocracy picked it up in the 20s, and the clergy held off for quite a time, and especially probably annihilated here in the Church of England in the 90s through New Labour. But the monarchs, you can see now it's making a bit more sense why they knocked off Edward VIII, which was the guy that abdicated. We can see clearly after this tonight why they, in my opinion, killed the supposed father of Elizabeth II. And the video that I showed last week, which we'll look at again, pretty much shows you that by the time they got there, that little gangster's mole on the throne, it was goodbye England, and goodbye law, and goodbye justice. Now at this point, it's of course not forgetting 1940, the Milner Group, who had pretty much took over this country in the First World War as a war cabinet, declared that they were handing the New World Order to the Jews. We've looked at that. If I can find the picture, Andy, I'll put that up again, but it's very clear that that's what they announced in 1940. So this is before, remember, before the so-called concentration camps. So that being the case, everything that was carried out in the World War II was carried out at the behest of those that call themselves Jews. Not the Torah Jews, but the Talmudic Jews, or the Khazars, the Mongols, the fruitcake bloodlines that have absolutely no bearing on either Judaism, Christianity, or indeed Islam. And the reason why everything they've done in these last centuries has been to make sure each of those religions despise each other. And if you look at what they're doing at the moment in Southport, on the back of this intelligence false flag, where this operative of theirs were told to go to this place and kill the 3 kiddies, they're now forcing the children that were victims of that to study Islam. Now, fuck's sake, if you couldn't conjure up a more dastardly agenda to create absolute hate, rightly so, you couldn't have chosen such a diabolical agenda as to force that down the neck of the kids that had to suffer. That intelligence agent that slaughtered 3 young children. So it's all going on now. This division is being embedded in big time. So to look at what we're going to look at tonight, it's not a big, massive, long gig neither, so I'm not going to bore you stupid. But it's going to come from a biblical perspective. So what I'm going to show, or what this data is going to show, is that this new trust that they're creating, called the Noachide law, has absolutely no bearing on biblical tradition, nor does it have any bearing on real Freemasonry. Okay, and it's got nothing to do with the Bible. It comes entirely out of the Talmud, which of course is, as described by the man, to be the laws of man. And then it was formulated, they say, in the 4th century and written from the oral law into the written word, and we know it as a body of work called the Talmud. Now, let me just put this into perspective before we start this, and that is this. I'm not interested in religion. religion is a control mechanism. It's always been so. However, I am very happy that in the old church, the church that created the civilization of architecture that they've been destroying for the last 200 years, did at one point have a connection to the higher realms, and so everything built and based in it gave that super architecture, the free energy that we know was around with that, the airships and everything else that went around that they've been destroying. And I suppose the final nail in the coffin were when they pretended that they've had these world fairs around these massive complexes of supreme architecture, which they claim that they built specifically for the world fairs, which is absolute bullshit. What they've done to us to look back in history is say, we built them just for the fair, we destroyed them. No, what actually that is the cover for them actually destroying that architecture. We have discussed the world fairs back in the day as well to show how before TV and radio land, that's how they programmed the man on the street with the agendas of the elites. So we've seen that there's a massive, massive black hole in history in relation to some point down the line, not that far away, there were a massive cataclysm that seemed to envelop most of the entire globe. And from that you get mud floods, you get all the destruction. And also you get no destruction of the properties, but there seems to be no men around, or females or children. And then the children are always whisked off and then spread across the world for this new system. Something seriously has happened in the last 300-400 years that they've completely hidden from us. Catastrophe, major league, and they've rewritten history to serve their purpose. Now, I'm not interested in the term Messiah, because that's tied entirely to religion. I speak of a man whose work we are aware of that they call the New Testament, and it was a man who understood the predicament of the capture of peoples and nations by the system we know as Babylon, and that he presented the way out to the world, and from that they created what we call Christianity. So I'm not interested in messianic. I don't care to discuss trinities. I'm not interested in crucifixions outside of the allegorical context of it. So we're not even interested in all that malarkey. We're just discussing data, which we know is called doctrine. Not the ins and outs, the ups and downs, and the rather obscure and ambiguous sort of narratives that go with these, let's say, religious systems. Okay, we're just speaking in terms of, hey man, came, said that, did that, look what we built on it. It kept out the slavers. It kept out what they all call the devil. Okay, it worked for a very long time. Something happened, that changed, they've been in, and they've been in for quite a long time, rewritten everything, put themselves at the top of the tree, and are expecting everybody else to obey. And this Noachide system is that very system. Now, in order they don't break spiritual law, this has to be implemented in a manner that's consensual, or the karmic kickback, as it's called, would come back straight to them. It's going to come back to them one day as people wake up, but people are going to have to awaken. It's not going to stop by itself. This is the thing. You know, this is the whole point of this live stream, this Wise Asylum. It's to help people recognise that actually the way you're meant to deal in this world is not to fix yourself to anything external, i.e. an external God, which, when you get down to the history of it, was always some king, some chief lord that existed way back in the mist of time, and basically they rebuilt that on the back of the egregore that surrounds these entities as they create themselves in the unseen world at the lower levels. So egregore, all this malarkey, this is where all these external gods and goddesses are sort of coming from. Doesn't mean they're all bad, let's get that into perspective either. But Ultimately, the man said that if you're looking to play here properly, correctly, and securely, then what you have to learn is how to trust your own instincts, your own intuition, because that is the kingdom that you were born with as a right. Okay, that's everything you need to know. The minute you start leeching parts of that out to other entities outside of yourself, institutions, for whatever, for safety, for pets winning prizes, for stature, or whatever it is you're looking for, each time you leak a little bit of your essence out to something else outside of yourself, the more you're being pulled in to being commanded by that external game called the world, which, according to their own doctrines, is controlled and run by an entity called Satan, and is there to test mankind. So, is he completely opposing God? Well, he is in the essence of his script, but at the top tree, is he not working with the ultimate creative force in order that you, when you're down here in your little avatar, are able to actually test yourself as to your capacity to see, to know, and to be as it is ordained in Genesis 1, and not get trapped into Genesis 2. We've covered all that on all these live streams, so I know you guys are aware of that. We've gone through the law. We can see clearly there is a mimic system that's pulled itself out of the cauldron. It mimics scripture, and in the essence of twin, one older offspring, younger offspring, placenta being the dead estate, and of course you being the baby, the firstborn, having been pulled into this system through registration, become subservient to the youngest, the deceased estate. It all makes sense, doesn't it, when we look at that? So we can look at all this doctrine as actually it's allegory. It's there for you to move your way through the labyrinth without getting caught up in it. However, people that get caught up in it see that as the be-all and end-all and become a part of it as though it is the be-all and end-all, when really it's just the game playing out in Genesis 2. So tonight's data is going to be very interesting, because if you're going to speak to this, because it is still, let's be honest, to the majority of people, the term Noachide is meaningless. They don't even know what it is. Yet, the imagery, the symbolism of it has been being pushed into your mind for the last 20 odd and maybe more years. And the specific symbol they're using is the rainbow. And of course, what have they done with that? Well, they've thrust it into all these fringe groups of complete and utter mentally ill people, such as those that believe that if they have a winkle, they can still be classed as a girl, or a dog, or a cat, a parrot, an ant, or a frog. And they've pushed all this symbolism through them in order they can protect that symbolism and make people afraid to attack it, or not necessarily attack it, but express the thoughts about what it actually really means. They've done the same throughout all this perverse blackmailing organisations such as Epstein, Aleister Crowley, Diddy, and all the rest. They've got all these Pete's, all these little games and chicken and all this nonsense, all put into these fringe groups so they can protect that symbolism while getting it into your minds as something real. I mean, the schools are full of rainbows. It's full of it. You know, this is how they're doing it, and they protect it because, of course, you're going to start calling rainbows. You're going, oh, you're a homophobe, you're a this and you're a that. Well, and people believe it, so they shit themselves and shut up. Here at the Wise Asylum, we don't shit ourselves and we don't shut up. So we don't actually care, because it doesn't work. And it's not that we're all, well, we are fantastic and amazing, but it's mainly because we've investigated the data and the knowledge around them to know that actually it is a blag. So why would we fall foul of any kind of blag when we know what it serves? So tonight we're going to go through this data, and what it is basically referencing the biblical script and the Masonic script, and it's going to show you that actually it has absolutely no bearing whatsoever in the biblical tradition. Now, it's not long-winded. There's not tons and tons of parables and all sorts of nonsense to go through, but if you can understand it in these terms, because of course most people out there, they have this biblical tradition embedded in their mind, you can point them to just certain little things and just show the ambiguity, or basically outright lie. A bit like the Schofield Bible, which is based entirely on the notes written in the Bible, classed as the Schofield Bible. They've rewritten the whole script for the Reformed Christianity on sort of Schofield's notes, and that's been missed. But this is how the deceiver operates. He doesn't give you necessarily an outright lie. He wraps it up, and if you're not using your own discernment, and you don't have the knowledge base to actually understand this, or more importantly, you have no trust whatsoever in your own abilities yourself, or internal, it wins, it beats you, and you get suckered into the wizardry. And then you dance to the dance you don't want to be dancing to. So it's going to be very important, I'm telling you now. It's not long-winded, but it's going to be worth the effort. So, with that, let's have a look who's joined us, and then we'll get stuck in. Because it's not actually that long neither, so we can have a chinwag after if you like. So benefactor says, hi Sean and the Wise Asylum team. Excited for your presentation tonight. Wishing you all the best. Can't wait to hear the insight show. Sure. Well, thanks for that, benefactor, and good evening to you. Mark says, evening Sean, evening Mark. Jerry says, evening Sean. And all in the Wise Asylum. And he has a symbol. Evening Jerry. Lone Rizzler, evening Sean and all, evening Lone Rizzler. Slipknot says, alright Sean, everyone, evening Slipknot. PY Music, good evening Sean and all, evening Paul. Paul says, good evening Sean and fellow inmates of the Wise Asylum, evening to you Paul. Nick says, hi to all, evening Nick. Kerry says, love from Ireland, love back to Ireland Kerry, and good evening to you. Upward Dog says, evening all Sean. Sean, can you come to the Sheepfound Boys event in Huddersfield on the 17th of May, please? Yeah, Muse sent me one of them. And I'm going to, yeah, I mean, I probably will come. It's just, I just said to him, just remind me near at time, because I'm terrible at remembering stuff. But yeah, I'm going to come. I am going to come. So the 17th of May, I need to embed that in my head. In fact, I'll put it in my diary. But trouble is, if I put it in my diary, I only see it the day before. So I'm sure Mew will keep poking me to remind me. But yeah, I am going to come on the 17th of May. Yeah, definitely. I believe he's definitely in there as well. That's good because I've used quite a lot of his stuff. So it'd be interesting to have a chat with him. And he's a fellow muso. So yes, I'm coming. AMG says, evening Sean and all non-mutants, and short to ask Jane. Evening AMG, how's it going, me old China? Did you have a bit of trouble over the weekend? Ooh, did you solve it? It looks like you did. Evening to you, mate. June says, good evening, Sean and chat. Evening, June. Jerry, good to you, so well done, Sean. Good stuff, Jerry. AMG says, evening, mate. So it says, Lon Rizzler. I think Jane must be enjoying a power nap. Oh, well, probably. Fat Henry UK says, good evening, Sean and everyone. Well done, Sean. All the same, I'm enjoying some magic cabbage. It's been a long day. Stop it. Stop it now, because I might even want one. Big E says, evening, Sean, and all are well and happy. Well, I am. I hope you are. Evening, Big E. John Smith says, does anyone know why they are now putting names in lowercase and the address and postcode in all caps? Is this a new scam? So what are they putting that in now? Because that is important. Now, the postcode, it is a blind adhesion contract. It is actually a military code by the occupying force, and it's administered by the post office. So the post office is the government on the land. And the fact that you're using a postcode, okay, it gives them another trip, another adhesion contract, which is that you've then agreed to release or relinquish your position as an inhabitant and present yourself as a resident. Now, when you get back into the days of the boroughs being formed, and then when these boroughs became corporations, what's very clear in those acts is that all the liabilities of the inhabitants and the borough became the liabilities of each individual council. Now, it does speak in relation to county councils, but of course all the councils within the counties are operating on behalf of the county council. And they have, using the postcode, getting your property on the land registry, even though you probably didn't do it, the solicitor did when you purchased it, or had already done it before. This is why you have solicitors when you're buying houses. They're not there to work for you. They're there to take some money off you to make sure that your estate or your person contracts with all these blind adhesion contracts. Postcode, land registry, and cement yourself as accepting that you are no longer inhabitant, which means you don't have any of the liabilities afforded to the debts as well. That right? So it's liabilities and debts. They're on the councils. But when they shift this on these blind adhesion contracts, you've shifted from inhabitant to resident. And then you're under this military code. And then the councils have a right to transfer their debt and liabilities onto your person. Because you're, of course, coming in identifying as the person. Trustee dis untoward. But before that, you've gone through 3 phases of blind adhesion contracts there and presenting yourself as a resident. Now, I haven't made a secret of this. I've got it on the website when I've presented stat decks and such, that when you were putting the address together, you would put your street name and your number after that in square brackets, which means it satisfies the postal game, but it's off the page when it comes to the legitimacy of the communication. The same with the postcode. Or rather, next is your town, because again, under this occupation code, the postcode, each town is then becomes the property of these councils. So you would present, I present near Accrington. So a near is in lowercase, yeah, and in italics. So you're presenting everything they need for the postal system, but you're making it clear. A, you're not using the number that's afforded to the military code, and that you're not acknowledging that your property is fixed in that town because it's near. Yeah? And then the postcode, again, is in square brackets. It's off the page. You're clearly communicating there that you're aware of those blind adhesion contracts and that you're not accepting them. But you don't want to screw things up for the mail system. You know what I'm saying? And so again, these blind adhesion contracts are massive. This is where they're getting. This is where they can just keep throwing it at you. You can stand there and say, I'm not person, I'm not this. You are when you go peel back these layers into these adhesion contracts. Yeah, do you get what I'm saying there? It's very, very important, these. And this, of course, is what we've launched out now in this recent conditional acceptance that they were trying to get rid of from before. Now, of course, the original conditional acceptance that we presented was going way back to 7th of March last year. But what happened there is, you see, now they were going for an insolvency order, yeah, to bankrupt you. Now, they can only do that if you're unable to pay. So what they did, the clever little bastards, this is your local council. So we'd sent the conditional acceptance, the terms were in there, we made it clear that the monies had been set aside to settle, or that settlement had been set aside, probably better not to use the term monies, that you'd set aside settlement remedy should the claim be proven. Now what they did, because of course they couldn't go before a judge with that document, which made it clear that they weren't insolvent. So what the bastards did was conceal that conditional acceptance and the acceptance certificate, which of course underwrites the contract and it becomes a security. They concealed that from 2 judges, and in order they could carry on. So they were actually pissing around to influence the course of justice. That's a criminal offence, okay? So all these things were put into their mix in that way, and they wanted to get rid of all that. And so it became a new case. What we've done, we've played a blinder. We've represented the conditional acceptance, way better improved, far more succinct, to the point, no mistake, no pissing around. Bang. But also, we've included these blind adhesion contracts. Now, we used inhabitant before, but now it's being presented as actually, we know that this is another blind adhesion contract. Shows the contract that you're enforcing that hasn't been based in any of these blind adhesion contracts, and we've listed them. Now that's put them in a mess, okay? That's a fucking mess, because they now can't prove the claim. In fact, the conditional acceptance in their tacit agreement on silence is the evidence now that they cannot prove their claim. You get what I'm saying? And of course, in your conditional acceptance, you've got to be very creative. And, you know, if you want to charge them, you've got to present it in that, if they can't do this. You see, you've got to make it clear that if they're going to not respond, then you say, then you are making the statement that, and then you tell them what it is they're saying. And then if you want to put a charge in there, you put a charge in there, a compensation in there, whatever it is you're looking to do. And whatever you put in that conditional acceptance, if they're going to tacitly agree through the act of silence, then they've agreed to the terms of the contract. Get the acceptance certificate in, it's underwritten, it's sealed, it's a contract. Now, they might think, well, we can get around that UK law. Well, that's another thing when you're doing your address. It's without the United Kingdom, because the United Kingdom is a corporation. So the United Kingdom, the postcode, the number, and the town, they fix and bind you or your property. Well, it binds you because you put your name, and binds your property on these blind adhesion contracts, and shifts you from inhabitant without any liabilities and debts into a resident, which the council can then transfer through the misrepresentation of personage, by the way, but only if you call them out on it. Yeah? And then, of course, on that blind adhesion contract that they've got, because there's no 2 wet signatures in these games, that you've actually consented on a wet signature, they're sharing your data with third parties, solicitors, whomever else they're sharing it with. Third-party corporate entities. You with me? So it's got very interesting. And of course, now we're at a higher court, which is far better. You don't want to play with them little shitty courts, because they're like rampant rats. You know, they're all nitty-gritty in the little town, and mafia. And they're there to make sure that they all get a piece of your pie. So they're all working together, the police, the council, social services, your local doctors, your local mental health institutions, your estate agents, all working together as a little mafia to make sure that everything they need to bring to bear on forcing you to do what they say works. Now, if you remember a few years ago, 2022, I think, I did a piece on them, how they are stealing your ID and creating a new entity in another county. A new council tax account based on a copy of yours, just slightly different. And then if you've got wealth, this is how they're stealing the wealth off everybody. It's a Jesuit gig. It's been going on for a long time. But what they'll do then is target the family that's wealthy by killing off those that would be inheritors of that portfolio, until they finally get to the final one. They'll kill that one and then they'll claim it on this fake ID in the other county. And the way that they do it is so precise, it's very difficult to pick up. But I expressed it in that video. Worthwhile you watching if you hold wealth on England, because this is how they're taking it all. And they're killing people. And they've got mental health on side, they've got the solicitors, they've got the estate agents, doctors, nurses, police, magistrates, judges. All that you'd expect in your system are operating as a local mafia. And that's in every single town across the nation. Which is why you need to get out of those shitty little courts in your area. And why they just railroad you if you've not got savvy with this difference between man and person. And so you can see the game. It's just the veil for me. It's just, there is no veil anymore. It's gone. I can see them all naked, and they've got all sorts of other operators involved through secret society affiliations, whether that be Freemasonry, whether that be the Rotary Club, whether it be the Jesuits, the Knights of Malta, whether it be even your anarchists, your Golden Dawn. All these covens are all working together in the dark, the shadows, to keep this out of the mix, as it were. And the way they do that is when they're targeting you, they'll isolate you. It's very clever what they do. And I mean, I can tell you this because, you know, my path was basically that I had to put myself in a position to be a target for all these organisations. And that's exactly what I was learning in the 1990s. And I've got to say, I've said it before, I wouldn't wish it on anybody. I really wouldn't, because the power they have, when you don't understand what's going on, is just way beyond anybody's capacity to beat it. It really is. And I can understand why I were put in that position, because I'm perfect for that kind of stuff, you know what I'm saying? But I'm not blowing my own trumpet there, because again, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, what you've got to go through to witness how these operations work. So that we're witnessing it firsthand in the physical, and of course as I've gone forward, I've come to understand the mechanics. I've come to understand it from a perspective where my mind can formulate it and show it or see it as an actual system that's fully operational, outside of it just being occult forces. But that's the game they're playing, guys, and it's real. And this is because the nations let go of the spiritual protection by becoming lesser moral societies. It opens the gate for these demonic forces. Okay, that's what happens, and that's what's happened, and that's why we're in this position today. But it doesn't mean to say we can't reverse that. But the only way that'll be reversed is not waiting for some fantasy fucking fruit bat to come down and save you. It's, if you want to get out of this, you've got to recognise that what the man was speaking was, if you want to follow me, you've got to be me. You've got to follow my doctrine to the point that you're walking it, you are being it, and that's the only way you can move yourself out of it. And now, as more and more people accrue that ability and understanding, then you have a force. And remember, you only need 5%. Now, they're trying to grab this 5% at the moment that are going to do action through the likes of Tommy Robinson. And they're only going to do nothing but what? Hooliganism, nonsense and garbage. The other 5%, they're going to create through these immigrants that they've pulled in this last 10 years. Because they don't know their ass from the fucking elbow. But amongst them are sound people, i.e. the Khazari, those from Kazakhstan, which in the main are the people that are putting these barbershops everywhere. They're not Turkish barbers, they're from Kazakhstan. And we know that Kazakhstan is where all this financial system, the religious system is going to move to as a front for being organised and run out of Israel. We can see what's happening in Israel now. Look what they're doing. You know, they're getting away with it. They've got King Cyrus in the mix again now. He's, King Cyrus, Donald Trump, the emancipator of the psychos. Now, I'll carry on with this and then we'll get into it. And you will understand this so more clear when we get through this document. Where are we there? Yeah. So that, I don't know about. You'll have to tell me what they've put in this lowercase name and address in, mate. Jane says, evening all, hope everyone is well. She's no longer catnapping, AMG. Evening, Jane. Just curling my very long legs up on the settee. Very long legs. Oh, dear. No naps going on here, as unlike AMG, I am youthful and energetic. Well, good on you, Jane. She gives as good as she gets. Miri says, NHS has a rainbow symbol. Good, well, good evening. Well, what have they just done for the last 4 years? They've killed everybody. So that's this new rainbow. And again, you're going to see exactly what you need to see from this document. Evening mute. AMG, evening mute. Because 1973 has the shaky hand and I think that's a robot's head. Evening cause, Jerry says, woe unto you lawyers. Indeed. Cleveland 100 says, greeting all new to this stream, interesting to hear your thoughts. You're very welcome, Cleveland 100, and I hope we keep your attention. So welcome. Mew says, welcome to the White Sound, Cleveland. Thanks for that, Mew. I'm going to have to relook at this to see if I can organise whatchamacallit, so I can turn you blue, Mew. But last time I tried, remember, it wouldn't let me do it. But I have been a good boy now for a good year on the old YouTube. They've not really had to call me names. So maybe they're going to let me in now and sort me own channel out. Because I have been a good boy. I mean, let's be honest. AMG says, I love that everything outside of the box is considered off the page. It makes it easier to dismiss so many papers, absolutely. John Smith says, thanks, Sean. The court clerk does not supply his full name and keeps sending me letters with a photocopy signature, which is just a squiggly line. Now, well, they can now present a electronic signature. Okay, so you need to accept that. That's what we've learned during this game, because we were always wet signature this, wet signature that. In this new system, because it's moving into the online arena, it's now acceptable, but it also has to have it printed so that you know who it is that sent it. So if he's sending you a squiggly line signature and you're not getting the full name of the clerk, then he's not satisfying CPR 5. Okay? So look that up, CPR 5, and that's what we've referenced throughout, which is what they got rid of before. But that's in relation to court orders. So court orders are very specific how they've got to be presented. And none of what came from Burnley courts was in any way, shape or form a court document. It were all these criminal tenants called councils and these mafias renting the court space to pretend to be courts and deal with you as though you'd gone through a court. Now, I've already, you see, with the Burnley courts, something I've been looking for a long time, which was case law in relation to a landlord being liable for having a tenant who is paying his rent with criminally acquired money. And I have informed the courts that their tenants are acting criminal, meaning the Burnley courts can't now take rents off this mafia without being liable, because they're in the know that actually it's criminal behaviour. And it's been a very interesting game with them. They've gone out of the picture altogether. We're now at an higher court. So there is a lot of battling to do. You need to get to them higher courts. So you're going to have to do battle, and you're going to have to take what they do on the chin. But you don't take it on the chin. You have to accept the shit. Well, you don't have to actually accept the shit neither. But you've got to be prepared to put the fight in. To complete. You can't be giving up. And it's not easy, I mean, and for me, because I've been doing this and it's not my assets on the line or my neck, it's still been an emotional roller coaster. And my two compadres, who are the ones running the risks, have gone through the fucking mill. They have gone through the mill, which I warned them about it would be, because you're going up against the council tax. The last thing they can afford is a case law showing that the game is garbage. They'll fight to the death. You've got to make them and make sure at the end of it, it's their death. So there is no easy gig here at all. You've got to be a certain character to do this stuff, So where we're at. So yeah, look at the CPR 5A for a start, John, and look at their rules. Because another thing I pointed out is that everything they're doing appears that they're following practice, not procedure. Yeah? But of course, for messing in their little courts, they don't give a shit about procedure. They're only interested in their practice. It's got to shift out. And it was a judge at Burnley Crown Court, a deputy district judge, that shifted it out for us. So they're not all bad. Or they were just doing it because they got this in such a quagmire that they had to do something. But honestly, I mean, I've learned so much in this case. The fact, even at the position we're at now, I can pull what I've done in this period down to maybe even 10 pages, basically. But obviously, that's a future endeavour. I haven't even looked at it at that yet, because we've just been busy fighting. It's been a battle all the way. So just look at CPR 5A 3, and that is their procedures on what is a court document and what isn't. They're also sending letters through a third-party mailing service. Well, this is another thing, and we found the very same. Now, specifically with the receivers. Now, the receivers that were handed it from this corporate mafia had DUNS numbers and no serviceable mail address, PO boxes. So what I did was seek out a serviceable mail address for the receiver service, which took us back to government, the CEO himself of the official receivers. So on it went to him. Now, because of the actions of his subordinate officers, he now owes a debt of 4 million. And he's been appointed the fiduciary trustee in the matter. Now, they thought it were a fucking big joke at the beginning. No, they don't. Now they've gone quiet. Because when you're spending everything special delivery and you're presenting your paperwork correctly, you've invoked the jurisdiction of the UPU, which I reminded them. And that changed things. No more flippant letters saying, well, we don't understand what you're saying, it has no standing in law. Well, yes, it fucking does, pal. You know what I'm saying? And you have to keep going. You just, it's been a, I mean, honestly, if you could all be flies on wall to see it, you'd be fucking amazed at what we've actually done. It's really good. But it's not over yet, chaps. I know enough about it, so we'll probably have to go to jail for 3 months. Well, you need to contact me, John, outside of this. But you need to show me that you are a guy called John Smith. You know what I mean? I'm happy to help, but what I'm saying is I can't do it for you, but I can show you what to do. Okay? And I help a lot of people, but just don't talk about it. But John, if you're real, John Smith, if that's your real name and you're not piss-arsing around, then you need to contact me outside of the Wise Asylum, and we will have to arrange a Zoom, and I'll go through with you you can explain to me what your problem is, and I'll go through with you what you can and can't do. And if you've got the bollocks, you don't have to go to jail. I mean, of course, as long as you've not done something ridiculously stupid, I'm happy to help. But of course, common law, see, this is the way I work. I'll help anybody as long as they haven't broke common law. Are you with me? Or that what they were doing weren't stupid and ridiculous and dangerous and to other people. So there is limits to how I'll help. But John, if you've really gotten that, what you were saying there, and you really are John Smith, then make contact with me outside of the Wise Asylum, and we'll see what we can do. Mew says, I've got your ticket for the sheep farm gig. Cheers, Mew. Nice one. So there we go. I'm definitely coming. Because even if they'll probably kidnap me, blindfold me, tie me up, and take me anyway. So that's one, Mew. Mark says, how many did you get, Mew? Okay. Weefy Man says, sorry I'm late. Ooh, we're into February as well. Very naughty, Weefy Man. But we are letting folk off. So we don't mind. Evening to you. You'll need that in a minute. Here, the apple. Yeah, we need an apple. There's an apple. I'm seeing an apple coming up. Nice one, Mew. 100 press-ups, like we into February now. We are. I think we might just expand it to March because it's freezing outside, which, of course, is affecting everybody's ability to think straight. So we'll postpone the February deadline till March. But after March, ladies and gentlemen, it's detention, lines, and press-ups, and that's it. And you have to video the press-ups so that we can see it. There's no cheating. And you have to send the lines as an email to me. So, and then we know that everybody is at least behaving. Because if you're not behaving, you're not allowed in the class. It's that simple. Right, chaps, that's an hour of waffling. And I think we need to get stuck into this here gig I've put together. But it's exceptionally enlightening. And the more you are aware of biblical tradition, the more terrifying this document's going to be, if you're not already aware of the Noachide laws. So let's crack on. Right, so the Noachide deception, okay? Beware the Noachide laws, all right. There's your rainbow and the dove and all the malarkey that goes with that fantasy of Noah. Right, from the perspective of the scriptures. In the words of 2 Maccabees, if the words of 2 Maccabees are correct, Jeremiah said, the Ark of the Covenant and the tent of meeting will come out at the time Yahweh gathers his people. Now, of course, the Ark of the Covenant and the tent, of course, is the old temple, okay, the second temple, or the garden, okay. The time of him gathering his people again is prophesied about Malachi chapter 3, the time he spares those who serve. So according to these doctrines, when the Ark of the Covenant and the tent of meeting comes out, this will be a time when big things begin. And you've got the image of the beast, which of course is the Ark of the Covenant, which is the Ark of the Contract, which was an Egyptian gig. So nothing biblical is original. It's all reference from Egypt, okay? And it was called the Ark of the Contract in Egypt. Now it's the Ark of the Covenant, but a covenant is, of course, a contract. And there is the tent. Well, today, that tent is what? The third temple, all right? So you've got to keep your eyes out for these. Now, so 2 Maccabees said, it was also contained in the same writing that the prophet, being warned of God, commanded the tabernacle and the ark to go with him. So he went forth into the mountain, where Moses climbed up and saw the heritage of God. And when Jeremiah came thither, he found a hollow cave, wherein he laid the tabernacle and the ark and the altar of incense. and so stopped the door. And some of those that followed him came to mark the way, but they could not find it. Which when Jeremiah perceived, he blamed them, saying, As for that place, it shall be unknown until the time that God gathers his people again together, and receive them unto mercy. Then shall the Lord shew them these things, and the glory of the Lord shall appear, and the cloud also, as it was shewed under Moses, and as when Solomon desired that the place might be honourably sanctified. Now, I probably don't need to have to read it all, but... And then in Malachi 3 it says, They shall be mine, says Yahweh of hosts, in the day when I make up my treasured possession, and I will spur them as a man spurs his son who serves him. Then once more ye shall see the distinction between the righteous and the wicked, between one who serves God and one who does not serve him. Now, as you all know, chaps, I'm not big keen on this term God. It's so ambiguous, it's quite ridiculous. And we've discussed the Barbello, have we not, as a group of what we know as the fallen angels, of which Yahweh, Allah, Odin, etc., are a part. And you can sanction all that back to Babylon as gods and sons of gods in that history if you've studied it outside of the narrative of Zacharias Sitchin. Okay. So if these verses are correct in 2nd Maccabees, then it is possible this will be what sets many things into motion, including the enforcement of the set of laws that are known as the Noachide laws. Now, so they're saying is basically, they're referencing those two and making it so that this cult, this Noachide cult, or Sabotage Zevi cult, are going to use these symbolic events to sanction sort of an upgrade of action, okay? Now, look what they've just sanctioned in Israel, or the plan that they've sanctioned will give them the ability to do this, won't it? So it's all a stepping stone game. And of course, King Cyrus is in action here. It's the emancipator of these fruitcakes. So we must consider that when the ark comes out is the time the priesthood is ready to completely take over the Middle East. Ooh. It could be the trigger that will embolden the Jewish people to take over the Temple Mount and build the third temple. King Cyrus is now in power, and they have launched the complete removal of the Palestinians from Gaza. The ark. Now, this is interesting because it's a beta switch. So now if I just flip over here, then, so I put this together in 2015 as Russia, let me just check that you can see this. I'll read it to you. It says, Russia had moved, a strange report circling in the Kremlin on the 6th of December, prepared by the Ministry of Defence, states that a sudden launching yesterday by aerospace forces of 2 satellites are for the protection of the Federation Naval Research Vessel, Admiral Vladimirsky, which has just departed the Saudi Arabian port of Jeddah after taking on board a mysterious object described as the Ark of Gabriel, whose importance is deemed so vital that the President Putin has further ordered naval warships, guided missile cruiser Varyag, the Sovremennik-class destroyer Batstry, Boris Chilkin-class fleet oiler Boris Bitoma, and the powerful salvage tug Alatu, that upon the ending of their current mission in India, they are to rendezvous with the Admiral Vladimirsky in the Southern Ocean, providing protection as it sails to Antarctica. So back in 2015, they were moving something that they're claiming is an Islamic thing, when in fact, no, it's not. Now, I'll put this obviously under the I'll put this under this video so you can fully study that. But so what I'm just trying to point out there is, when it comes to the ark being shown, there are signs that that actually took place in 2015, albeit a beta switch to make it look like it had more connotations to Islam. So this is the aim of Chabad Lubavitch and other ultra-Talmudic groups as they move to place the nations into full and absolute submission to this creed, the Noachide, around the world. In order to satisfy this move, they've been pushing for a universal worldwide law known as the Noachide High Laws. This isn't something new, but for the psyche of the masses, they are drip-fed this through the use of symbolism, specifically the mass use of the rainbow. To ensure the cat is not out of the bag too soon, they have wrapped this symbol around all their fringe groups that are undermining the cultures based in biblical law. Why do I use the term biblical law? Simple. Because this creed comes directly out of the Talmud, that being the Noachide. Or as the man stated, which is a man that built the New Testament, he called it the laws of man as a body of work. So we today know it as the Talmud, but previous to the 4th century, when it was the oral law, it was known by the man as the laws of man. And that's exactly what his entire mission was decrying. Okay, saying laws of man are not subservient to the laws of God. Or laws of the Father. Because he doesn't use the term God, he uses the term Heavenly Father. And this is why I find the term God to be ambiguous. There's thousands of gods out there. Every man and his dog's got a God. You know what I'm saying? The symbol has been thrust down the throats of your offspring since at least 1997, when the New Deal pulled in through New Labour completely changed the entire education format. Now, so they changed the education format in Christendom, but many, many moons ago, the overall doctrine was shifted in Freemasonry, which, of course, Freemasonry in its original form was there to protect England as a nation against the Holy See families. Of course, it's failed miserably, and this, in part, is a big reason why. Now, Albert Mackey, a very important Freemason and, of course, historian. Now, I just put, before we enter this subject, we need to understand one very important fact about the original difference between English and York Rite and that of the Scottish Rite. York Rite does specifically require a member to be a Christian. So the York Rite of England, you've got to be a Christian to proceed through the high degrees, or orders of this path, the last 2 orders of the Templar series. The Scottish Rite does not require a belief of the Christian religion and may be a viable option for non-Christians, okay? Now that pans out when you consider that the temple that the Templars created in the inner city of London was in fact a round temple and dedicated to Mary, the mother of Jesus, not that has been promoted since the Civil War when the Venetians took over and installed the HQ of the East India Companies. Solomon's Temple, okay? We've gone through that in previous live streams. We've shown that as a clear fact. So there's a major difference between the Scottish Rite and the York Rite. English York Rite, you've got to be a Christian. Scottish Rite, I'll accept anybody and his dog, okay? So that's the game. Now, it's going through this here about the Noachide Judge, 21st degree Prussian Knight, but right now at this particular moment, what we need to concentrate on is this. Now, Albert Mackey says in his book, the book of the Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, chapter XL2, it says, Noah and the Noachides, page 406. He says, in reality, there is no legend of Noah to be found in any of the Masonic rituals. There is no myth like that of Enoch or Euclid, which intimately connects him with the legendary history of the institution. And yet the story of his life is exercised as very important influence in the origin and the development of the principles of speculative masonry. So basically there's a massive difference between speculative masonry, which was born of the Scottish Rite, and it has no bearing at all on the original Masonic ritual, okay? So they've formed this, okay? Now page 407 says, on examining the old records of the operative Masons, it will be found that no place is assigned to Noah, either as a Mason or as one of the founders of the science. He receives only the briefest mention. Now, we have a guy called Dr. James Anderson. Now, this is the toss bag, a bit like Schofield, who, by deception, because the Masonic Brotherhood are not the brightest, changed things slightly. Now, he says about Anderson, he says, Anderson, who in the Book of Constitutions modified and enlarged the old craft legends at his pleasure. He calls Noah and his 3 sons, all Masons, true, and says that they brought over from the flood the traditions of the arts of the antediluvians and communicated them to their growing offspring. And this was perhaps the first time that the patriarch was presented to the attention of the fraternity in a Masonic character. And he adds, without the slightest historical authority, that this word Noachide was the first name of Masons according to some old traditions, okay? So it's very clear that Freemasonry got shafted, but we're talking specifically about the Scottish Rite, which would then form the speculative Masonry, okay? That Noah had absolutely no bearing on anything to do with Masonry whatsoever, and certainly wasn't in any of the rituals, and certainly wasn't classed as a Mason. Now, that was obviously then from the York Rite as well, okay? So you can see the obfuscation in the Scottish Rite because this is the Jewish Templar group when they took over Scotland, when they were brought in by Robert the Bruce, who Edward I was fighting. Now, having thus invented and adopted the name as the distinctive designation of a Mason, he repeats it in his second edition of revision of the old charges, appended to the Book of Constitutions. The first of these charges, in the Constitutions of 1723, contained this passage: a Mason is obliged by his tenure to obey the moral law. In the edition of 1738, Dr. Anderson has, without authority, completed this sentence by adding the words as a true Noachide. This interpolation was rejected by Entick, who edited the 3rd and 4th editions in 1756 and 1767, and by Northhook, who published the 5th in 1784, both of whom restored the old reading, which has ever since been preserved in all constitutions of the Grand Lodge of England. Okay, so England, far from being the cause of all the problems in this imperial force, is the victim because it held true to the original Freemasonry. It's the Jews, or the pretend Jews, let's say, the Venetians, who took over Scotland. I mean, David I pulled in every single debauched, Medici-connected aristocratic family into Scotland under David I. So most of these names that people think are Scottish are not at all. They're nothing to do with Scotland. This is the Holy See retaking the British Isles as they retook America with American Civil War. And they did that the same in England with the English Civil War. But this is what Edward I was fighting, which is why wherever you look, they present him as a tosser, when in fact Edward I was an absolute superb example of a king. He said, I'm the King of England, go away, Holy See, we're not interested in you, I'm the daddy, and formulated England on that basis. And he was putting a ring around Scotland and a ring around Wales because the Lombardy aristocracy had quite an arm in North Wales, specifically Anglesey. I mean, thus it right, so there we go. Now there we have an image of the actual piece in Albert Mackey's book. Now I will, of course, again put that. It says about that time, on page 409, or a little later, a degree was fabricated on the continent of Europe, bearing the name of Patriarch Noachide. So this is created in Europe, nothing to do with England. One peculiar feature of which was that it presented the existence of 2 classes or lines of Masons. The one descending from the Temple of Solomon, who were called Huramites, and the other tracing their origin to Noah, who were styled Noachides. Neither Preston nor Hutchinson nor any other writer of the 18th century appear to have accepted the term, but it was a favourite with Dr. Oliver, and under his example it has become of so common use that Noachide and Freemason have become to be considered read as synonymous terms. So I will present that in and under rather this video for you to peruse, okay? So that just shows you that it's not only just the shift of biblical, which is what we're going to get into now, but actually they've had to do it into everything. And this is why Freemasonry is so tied into this this evil antagonist system, because they're not the brightest on the fucking tree, and they've been listening to their grandmasters, who were all basically Russian Jews, which were imported from 1860 to 1915, and with all our men in the First World War being killed, these Johnny-come-latelys took over Freemasonry entirely. Edward I got Kitchener to change the mandate of Freemasonry from the upholding of England against the Holy See to the establishment of the coming Israel. So it's all been played out because, of course, Victoria was sired by Rothschild and all their offspring were sired by Rothschild. Now, at this point, we need to get some basic biblical principles established. So, first point of note, the Jewish people do not make up all of the biblical Israel. They represent those who lived in the land of Judea, which consisted mainly of the tribe of Benjamin and Judah, with the possibility of those from the tribe of Levi. But this is not evidence. And we've gone through this years ago in live streams. There's actually no evidence at all for Israel actually existing. Or if it is, they are either made up of the fleeing Akhenaten group, or they are the original Egyptian aristocracy that were pushed out by the Hyksos. So that's what we've explored in the past. And again, you come up with the fact that there is no archaeological evidence to back this theory that we're looking at today. So although we're looking at it from a biblical perspective, I am not claiming one way or the other that this is as a point of fact. It's a point of fact in that this is the tradition, but we're not making a determination as to whether it's a fact or not, okay? Another possible idea is that those that moved to the south were in fact the rebels from all the tribes in the north. These tribes later became known as the Southern Kingdom or Judah. Because they were quite strict if you go through some of the stuff in the north, and a lot of people were going against it and they were getting kicked out. So I always looked at the possibility that the Southern Kingdom or Judah could have been formed by all the rebels, the pirates, the nut jobs, you know? Which is why they hate the 10 tribes of the Northern Kingdom. Second point of note, the sole-named Kingdom of Israel was divided into two, the Northern Kingdom and the Southern Kingdom. The Southern Kingdom was banished from the land to Babylon because of their disobedience. But according to tradition, they returned 70 years later under the protection of the Babylonian warlord, who would then become a king, Cyrus the Great. Yeah, Cyrus the Great, he emancipated the captives back to the Levant to build the second temple. But of course, they built it, they didn't know how to run it, they went back to Babylon and asked the Babylonian priests to come in and operate it. So, from the get-go, the second temple was operating under the Babylonian system, okay? And of course, who came to demolish that temple? By expressing the way we're supposed to operate, well, that's the guy they call Yeshua, or Jesus. Now, I'm not claiming that he was a Messiah, because that doesn't matter to me. He was just a man that understood the game and decided to tell those his neighbours, you might say. The data relating to the return is found in the books of Ezra and Nehemiah. The Northern Kingdom, or the other so-called 10 tribes, are referenced by the prophets as Ephraim, and claims they were banished to Assyria, but it's only a claim. However, they never returned to the land like the Southern Kingdom did. These tribes are said to have assimilated into the nations around the world, which was prophesied to happen by Jacob. Now, again, we've explored in the past the fact that these Israelites that were actually the original Egyptians that were forced out by the Hyksos, that then one branch moved in to become what we know as the Greek civilization, and that these other guys, having been sent into the Levant from Egypt, became the Scythian tribes, okay, or the Saka, from which you get Buddha, very in tune with what Yeshua says. So we're not making a statement of claim, but when we investigated that was what we potentially looked at as a possibility. Either way, the 10 tribes that were called Israel, because Judah was never a part of Israel, never came back to the Levant. They assimilated, okay? These tribes are said to have assimilated into the nations around the world, which was prophesied to happen by Jacob. Now, Israel in Genesis chapter 48:17, when blessing Joseph's 2 sons before he died, gave Ephraim the firstborn blessing, and declared he would become a multitude of nations, thus not being a part of the nation of Israel, but rather of the nations of the world. Now, this is where you can start to look at the placenta. You know, the baby's the firstborn, the placenta is the younger, the secondborn, the twin, that becomes the deceased estate that this system holds in custody, and then creates a trust and assigns your father's surname. The sins of the father are then attached to this deceased trust or the younger. And thus, in that sense, these pillars have mimicked this and turned it into something sick and twisted. So, yeah, that's that bit. Now, in Genesis 49, which is what we just referenced, when Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand on the head of Ephraim, it displeased him. And he took his father's hand to move it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. And Joseph said to his father, "Not this way, my father, since this one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head." But his father refused and said, "I know, my son, I know. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great. Nevertheless, his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his offspring shall become a multitude of nations." Now, it would be very easy to twist that around. The 10 tribes weren't actually the firstborn anyway. When you get into the Midrash and realise that it's such a mishmash of texts that at some point they must have found and just tried to turn them all into something. It's the Midrash that really shows you, obviously it's a long time since I did all that they've just conjoined a load of garbage and turned it into we're the best in the world, everybody has to obey us. Now, the third point of note, when coming out of Egypt, the scriptures record how there were many who joined Israel when they left Egypt, okay? So there are all sorts of geezers going, yeah, we'll come in, yeah. All of which would later be incorporated and become known as one block of people and to be classed as Israel. So they were Isis, Ra, El, okay? So it's all Israel stuff, and I believe that the Exodus wasn't an Exodus, it was the Hyksos kicking them out. And then they had Akhenaten, didn't they? Anyway, and in Exodus 12:37, 14:19, Exodus 16:1, it says, "And the people of Israel journeyed from Ramesses to Succoth, about 600,000 men on foot, besides women and children. A mixed multitude also went up with them, very much livestock, both flocks and herds. Then the angel of God, who was going before the host of Israel, moved and went behind them, and a pillar of cloud moved from before them and stood behind them, coming between the host of Egypt and the host of Israel. And there was the cloud and the darkness, and it lit up the night without coming near the other all night." And that sounds like a volcano to me. Yeah? But of course, it's all been turned into some kind of fantasy. But that makes perfect sense to me as a volcano. "They set out from Elim, and all the congregation of the people of Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they had departed from the land of Egypt." Now, the fourth point of note, these foreigners were to follow the same Torah, which is a testament, by the way. Remember what the Torah is, the Tanakh. It's just a testament, a teaching, nothing else. And it's a testament made by men, remember. Even Moses was a man, And even his wife told him he was a concrete fruit bat for thinking his people were stupid that had believed sucking to half the stuff he was saying. And he had the tripping stone. He kept tripping over the stone. He was full of shit, basically. So the Torah read Testament. Testament read made by men. Okay? Of course, this priesthood has turned it into it's made by a god. Well, a god man, of course, like King Cyrus. All these god men were in Babylon and Sumer. So, 4 points to note, these foreigners were to follow the same Torah as was given to the native born. So, this testament back in the day wasn't just specific to one particular group of people. It was a testament that was given to everybody. Not just those born in that place, but all those that joined it, that then made up the 10 tribes of Israel, okay? Referenced in Numbers chapter 15:15, his Torah was made for all peoples. This is fundamental. That is what was given to all of Israel, not just the 2 tribes found in what is termed Southern Israel. But of course, Judah and Benjamin try and claim that it was theirs all along. They're the geezers and they're the ones that are pulling back the 10 tribes because they're in control. You can see it's just a load of bollocks, basically, because the scripture is against it. It's garbage. And Numbers says, for this community there will be the same law for you as for the foreigner living with you. And of course the Greeks called anybody not Greek a foreigner. Yeah? Again, showing you that there's the same race as those that ended up in the Levant. Okay? And then I have discussed this in previous live streams. It's quite important data. But if you've been following it through as you have, it makes a bit more sense to you. This is a permanent regulation through all your generations. The foreigner is to be treated the same way. Now, they use Yahweh, but it's a testament, as yourselves. The same Torah and standard of judgment will apply to both you and the foreigner living with you. So it's got nothing to do with, it's just ours, the Jews, the Judahites, or the captive Babylonians who created a Babylonian temple. Yeah, they've claimed that, and it's a lie. A complete and utter lie. Right? But that's the basis of this Noachide system. The Torah was given to all Israel, which in point of fact means the 10 tribes who assimilated and for the foreigner who chose to follow Yahweh. Yahweh said if Israel followed his Torah, the world would recognize them as wise and understanding people. Isaiah 5:14 declares how the Torah will be the light for the nations, and yet the tribes of Judah decry the nations with the claim they are not of the nations. So Judah says it's not of the nations, it's above the nations. When it's pretty clear that the Old Testament was for everybody. Yeah, not just Judah. In fact, not Judah at all. They're the pillocks that wouldn't accept it. They want to be it. It's a big difference. So when you look into the Israel stories and God's decrying the Israelites, it's actually not. They've transferred it onto the Israelites. Like they transfer your position of inhabitant to resident. Same gig, same priesthood, same wizardry. But wish to stand above the nations as the overlords administering the legal system called the Noachide laws. 15:4 says, listen to me, my people, hear me, my nation, the law will go out from me, my justice will become a light to the nations. Isaiah 2:3 and Micah 4:2 prophesy of the nations will come and learn the Torah. They prophesy virtually the same thing, almost word for word. This is the prophesied return of Ephraim, which is the 10 tribes. The northern kingdom is noted by the prophet Jeremiah. Many peoples will come and say, come, let us go up the mountain of Yahweh to the house of the God of Jacob. He will teach us his ways so that we will walk in his paths. The law will go out from Zion, the word of blah, 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 blah. Many nations will come and say, come, let us go up to the mountain. Now, you see, this again for me is twisted stuff, but we're presenting this as this is the biblical tradition. So we're not getting into the malarkey of it. I just want you to know that that's not how I see it. Because, of course, the New Testament came in and cancelled out the Old Testament. So when you're talking about this game, we're talking about the Heavenly Father, because it bypassed all this stuff. They need to go back to the old stuff, this Judahite system, the Babylonian system, in order to cancel out the new system. There will be a day when watchmen cry out on the hills of Ephraim, come, let us go up to Zion to... okay, bit like... Matrix film there a bit, anyway. Ephraim returning, though they have become the nations all around, is prophesied they will return to the Torah, the nations, the Gentiles pursuing the Torah, which now means the New Testament, because that's what became Ephraim, the New Testament, the 10 tribes. That's what created Europe, Russia, Americas, yeah, even Japan. He declared that after they had been dispersed into the nations, they would return to the ways of Yahweh. Well, is it? It's also seen here in Deuteronomy chapter 30. It shows how even though Yahweh dispersed them in judgment, they would return in obedience. Today, and as a direct result of the teachings of sabotaging, well, if they were in obedience, they came back as Christians. Remember? The New Testament. Today, and as a direct result of the teachings of sabotage carried through today by the mumblings of the Rebbe, there are many who call themselves Jews who say the Torah is only for the Jews, even though the Jews are only a small fraction of biblical Israel. They say the Torah is only for them. So that's the Judahites. Well, this is the Rebbe, this is Abad Lubavitch, this is Sabbatai Zevi. Now, there I have a link to a full chronology of the story of Sabbatai Zevi through to Jacob Frank, right up to its takeover of England and the rest of the world. Let me just see. I have it here. So there it is. I'll put that underneath this video. For those who haven't seen it, it's a very interesting read. Remember, the Jews do not represent the 10 tribes of Israel, that the 10 tribes are prophesied as becoming a part of the nations of the world, and are prophesied as coming back to Yahweh and pursuing his testament. Yet the Jews get mad when they see a non-Jewish people pursuing the Torah in any way. The truth of this is simple. The 10 tribes fulfill this through the acceptance of the New Testament and thus following their Heavenly Father. See, it's all transmuted. It's no longer the Old Testament. It's the Testament as given by that geezer. And I'm not saying he's a prophet. I don't care about a Trinity. I'm not even interested in the crucifixion, because the allegory of it, we've discussed and we understand what that's talking about. It's a personal journey. So Deuteronomy, you'll be scattered among the peoples, and only a few of you will survive among the nations to which he will drive you. 20, there will be worshipped man-made gods of wood and stone, which cannot see or hear and smell. But if from there you seek your God, you will find him if you look for him with all your heart and with all your soul. Okay? Inside yourself. New Testament. Yeah? These Jews don't. It's an Ark of a Covenant. It's a tent. Can you see that the deception is so clear to me, but obviously not to Bible scholars. They just fall for this shit. Because they're playing me on an emotion and the narrative we put into them from being children. They edit it. When you're in distress and all these things have happened to you, then in later days you'll return and obey him. Okay. When all these blessings and curses have set before you come up upon you and you take them to heart, wherever dispersion when you and your children return to blah blah blah, and obey him with all your heart and with all your soul according to everything I command you today. And of course, the Old Testament we're taking off to the Ephraim, which is the 10 tribes. We're not speaking of this old shit. We're speaking of the new, and that's what they came forward with. This bunch of come back to the old stuff because that's what they're like. That's their frequency, and they want to get rid of this. So what we are seeing is it's the parable of the prodigal son found in Luke 15 being played out before our very eyes. The prodigal son, Ephraim, the northern kingdom, is returning to the father and pursuing his ways, his testament. But the older brother, Judah, is jealous and mad because they are returning, because it overshadows them. Yeah? And then on a personal level, we've explored the prodigal son is coming back to the father, the kingdom within, as Jesus or Yeshua taught. Not because you were a Messiah, just because you were a man that woke the fuck up. What is truly tragic is that so few people today take the time to read what Jesus actually said, even though the records of his life and his teachings have been translated into most of the world's languages today. From the original Greek manuscript to the New Testament portion of the Bible, I don't think that anybody who actually reads what Jesus taught, as opposed to listening to or reading what other experts, like pastors, claim he taught, could come away with the belief that Jesus came to make the world a better place. He came to destroy the world because the world is controlled by Satan. His heavenly Father, or ours, created the earth and the heavens and the plants and the animals and the seas, yeah? Big difference. Genesis 1 is not Genesis 2. In fact, he taught just the opposite. Here is one example from the book of Luke in the New Testament. Quote, "I have come to bring fire on the earth, and now I wish it were already kindled. Do you think I came to bring peace on earth? No, I tell you, but division. From now on there will be 5 in one family divided against each other, 3 against 2 and 2 against 3. They will be divided, father against son and son against father, mother against daughter and daughter against mother, mother-in-law against daughter-in-law and daughter-in-law against mother-in-law." Luke chapter 12. Jesus never taught his followers to make the world a better place. He taught instead that the kingdom of God was invading the earth and disrupting Satan's kingdom, the world. The life of the followers of Jesus is vividly described by Jesus and demonstrated by his own life and those who followed him in the New Testament documents as a life of constant conflict, a spiritual war of encountering and opposing the world system ruled by Satan. Jesus never taught that we need to make the world a better place. He taught us to invade it and oppose it until he came back to destroy it. Now, he come back to destroy it when we all become a representation of our true soul or our origin in the image of what, by golly? We've gone through the original translation of the Hebrew on the Genesis 1, which is very clear. It's not the Elohim that created man, but it's the father of the beginnings that created the Elohim, or the Barbello. We've done all this, and there's just the prodigal son. Judah is jealous and must be because they're returning. So what's the response to this return of the younger brother? The older brother says, "The Torah isn't for you, that's only for us. You follow the Noachide laws and we will command them." So that's what they're offering, these fruit bats. It's not for you, these are for you, the Noahide laws, okay? The truth is that most Jews couldn't care less if Gentiles pursue the Torah, but as described, due to the efforts of the Talmudists, there is a growing number that are opposed to Gentiles pursuing the Torah. This opposition will only continue to grow as we get closer to the end days in this system of futurism. When the end days are happening, people will see how the Antichrist will pursue anyone who pursues the Torah in the faith of Yeshua as the Messiah. This is why at present the priesthood allows Islam to prosper. They do not study the Torah, they study only the Quran. In these Noahide teachings, the Antichrist will be viewed as the Messiah. To the world, this will be especially so to the Messianic Jews, and will not accept anyone as their Messiah unless he's a Jew. Thus, just as Yeshua the Messiah was a Jew, the anti-Messiah will be a Jew as well. Remember, there are 2 things that modern Orthodox Jews hate. 1, people saying Jesus is the Messiah, and 2, non-Jews pursuing God's law, the Torah, or the Testament. They believe all Gentiles must follow the Noahide laws. They will control. Knowing these 2 points, consider who gets persecuted in the end times as presented in Revelation 12:17, and the same seen in Revelation 14:19. So Trump runs around saying, "I'm a Christian, come to me, my Christians." Revelation 12. Then the dragon was enraged at the woman and went off to make war against the rest of her offspring. That's the mother of Jesus. Those who obey God's commandments and hold to the testimony of Jesus. Okay. But as the Messiah, well, we don't have to pretend he was a Messiah. He was just a man. He said he was the Son of Man, didn't he? It's religion that's turned him into this Messiah, this Trinity, all this garbage nonsense that nobody can get their fucking head round, without massive sophistry and a blag to just edge it. You know, I mean, I just won't accept it. If I can't understand it, it doesn't make sense, it's bullshit, and I won't accept it. So Revelation 4, a third angel followed them and said in a loud voice, "If anyone worships the beast and his image and receives his mark on the forehead or on the hand." Now listen, and we're thinking about this. Okay. Yeah, you've got to take this as it is. But what is a head at the fore of a male? What is the head that is at the fore of the male? It's his penis, isn't it? And what does Pharaoh mark his slaves by? A trauma ritual, circumcision. Because the Bible is very clear that circumcision is about peeling back the heart, circumcising the heart to open it up. Again, the word was replayed by these scribes. Receives a mark on his forehead or on the hand. So, for me, that is circumcision, the penis, the head at the fore. I mean, it just makes sense to me. I'm not saying it's fact, but that's how it reads to me. Or on the hand. He too will drink of the wine of God's fury, which has been poured full strength into the cup of his wrath. He will be tormented with burning sulphur in the presence of the holy angels and of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment rises forever and ever. There is no rest day or night for those who worship the beast and his image, or for anyone who receives the mark of his name. So, this calls for patient endurance on the part of the saints who obey God's commandments and remain faithful to the man. Well, you're not faithful to the man, you're faithful to his teaching. Like you would be faithful to your teacher at school if you thought he'd given you something good. Though many don't want to accept it, the Antichrist will be Jewish and perceived as a long-awaited Jewish Messiah. But for now, the script wants you to see that the Antichrist figure is coming out of Islam, which we've explored. An essential ingredient if the Third World War strategy is to be fulfilled, absolutely. And there now we have an example of the Third World War strategy as presented by Albert Pike to Mazzini. Pike being a supreme pontiff of the Scottish Rite Freemasonry. I'll put that up. Well, the Third World War, it says, the Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agents of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam and political Zionism mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on the issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual, economical exhaustion, which is exactly what we've been doing since 1948. We shall unleash the nihilists, that's the entire Soviet mass, the Bolsheviks. We have a Bolshevik bastard in as a Prime Minister today. Trump is also one, even though he's pretending to be its opposition. We will unleash the nihilists, say Bolsheviks, and the atheists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm, which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations the effects of absolute atheism. So this is Judah attacking the nations because it's the 10 tribes of Ephraim. And they've come back to the Father through the New Testament. The haters, the fucking haters. The origin of savagery and the most bloody turmoil. The multitude disillusioned with Christianity, which is where we're at today, will receive the true light through the universal Jesuit Vatican II system and the manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out into public view. Externalization of the hierarchy, that's Blavatsky's work. This will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. So again, I'll put that underneath this video. Now, we're nearly there, chaps. What are the Noachide laws? The Talmudic Judaism, the 7 laws of Noah, or the Noachide laws, are said to be a set of imperatives which, according to the Talmud, were given by God as a binding set of universal moral laws for the sons of Noah. That is the all of humanity. Well, we've already looked and said it's bullshit. It's not biblical, and it's not even Freemasonic. So even the Freemasons are a total scapegoat to this Jesuit Holy See system. These 7 laws of Noah were recognised by the United States Corporate Congress in the preamble to the 1991 bill that established Education Day. It was in honour of the birthday of a certain rabbi, that's the Rebbe, who was the leader of Chabad movement, which is Sabbatai Zevi, this is Benjamin Netanyahu, Trump, etc., etc. So they've got nothing to do with the Bible. They're not even Masonic at all. It's utter garbage. This idea that there were laws set out across the people on to Noah is a fantasy born of the Talmud. Now, it started, you can say, 1991, United States, with the Congress accepting Education Day, which was basically honouring the 7 Noahide laws. However, it began on Blighty, Just a minute. With this gangster's moll.
In the old days, the monarch led his soldiers on the battlefield, and his leadership at all times was close and personal. Today, things are very different. I cannot lead you into battle. I do not give you laws or administer justice. But I can do something else. I can give you my heart. I do not give you laws or administer justice. I can give you my heart. I do not give you laws or administer justice. I can give you my heart.
Okay, so there we go. Crystal clear. The beginnings of the introduction of this Noachide system, especially so under Queen Elizabeth II, after they'd killed who was supposed to be her father to get her out of the way, because Queen Mother then, you've got to understand who the Queen Mother was. Not a very nice person. So, whereas Congress recognised the historical tradition of ethical values and principles which are the basis of civilised society and upon which our great nation was founded, well, it wasn't. Because the Masons founded America and the Constitution were not these shit-ass Masons after they installed the Scottish Rite fantasy of Noah and his happy fruit bats. So, this is again, you know, when people are decrying Washington and all these guys that formulated America, they were original proper Freemasons and had absolutely nothing to do with this. And this is why this, because it's behind the Holy See, because this is Genghis Khan's bloodlines, had to then take over the colonies and form the United States of America, the corporation, through Lincoln, who made it clear that without the sinister help of the Jesuits, the Civil War would never have taken place. So this is a lie. The Congress recognised Education Day on a lie and claimed it to be the very laws upon which America was founded. Bullshit. The 7 Noachide laws. Now, some believe the Noah laws are a harmless set of general rules, and maybe that's the case on the face of it. However, how they're interpreted with over 1,000 sub-laws is extremely dangerous. The 7 universal laws of man, made by man, and therefore they are the laws of man. Decried by Jesus, the Noachide laws are listed in the Talmud as this. Now, prohibition of idolatry, prohibition of murder, prohibition of theft, prohibition of sexual promiscuity, prohibition of blasphemy, prohibition of cruelty to animals. Now, is there anything wrong with them? But yet, look at what they've done to the West. Look what they've done to the Africans. Sexual promiscuity as normal. That started in the 60s. Look at it today. It's disgusting. It's ridiculous. It's destroyed the family. So the first 6, you may say, as a decent average guy, there's nothing wrong with them. And there probably isn't. But then you get to the 7th law. Requirement to have just laws. You shall set up an effective judiciary to enforce the preceding 6 laws fairly. That's the kicker. That's the kicker. So here's where it opens itself up to the reality. And if you've moved to understand the different jurisdictions of law, the game is clear. The Noachides are commanded to, you shall set up an effective judiciary to enforce the preceding 6 laws fairly. That might sound good, but notice how the Sabbath, which is established from creation, is not included in these commandments. Thus Gentiles are prohibited from observing the Sabbath, because their capacity at title has been decapitated to that of a slave or one who cannot contract. Clearly they intend to give you no rest as they operated on the plantations during the days of open slavery. So the 7th law is about creating this entire legal system. The admiralty, the commerce, and the shit that we're all fighting, because it's all based on the power of the younger twin, the dead estate, the deceased estate, the sins of the father's surname. Yeah? Can you see? Well, they keep the estates through the Vatican, through the maiden name. Okay? Can you see what I'm saying there? So this whole legal system, they all decry. Admiralty, you know, all of it, right down to what we're facing today, is this system, this judicial system that they're commanded to install over your common law, over your real law. And as she said, I do not give you law, I do not administer justice, I give you my heart. Well, look what that did. Didn't do us right much good, did it? So there is the issue. It's the seventh law is the problem. Because that is the entire legal system that they've been setting up for what, 200 years? Over and on top of our common law. Over and on top of the American Constitution. Yeah, the English Constitution. By dragging constitutional common law into the realm of government and commerce. And then twisting it up on the personage, natural person, legal person, equitable person, blind adhesion contracts, etc., etc. And you can see, I've said to you before, they're going to move our estates into this new trust, decapitating us at title. And the fact that we cannot observe the Sabbath doesn't give you that day of rest. You're right back to slave. You can't contract. And you can see there, they're going to be treated in exactly the same way as they treat the slaves when the Jews, the same families, were running the slave trade out of Africa through the British ports and onto the American or Caribbean plantations. It's never had anything to do with the nations, whether that's England. So when you're decrying a nation, you're off your head, you're misinformed, you're ignorant of the facts. It's this bunch of tossers that hate the nations that run the empire. The East India companies, the British Empire, the Roman Empire. You know, created Pakistan so that the Pakistanis in their entirety are working for the empire. But they're over here thinking they're fighting the empire because they think they're stupid, that the empire is England. No, you are the empire in today. You know, history will show you who the empire was, you. Can you see, it's the wizardry is just, if you're not thinking, you're not using discernment, if you're running on emotion, you are screwed. You are never going to see through the wizardry. You are not going to, the veil will not remove itself for you. Now, those who promote these laws are telling people there are two sets of laws. One for the Jews, the Torah, and the other for the Gentiles. But as noted before, this is not scriptural, as shown in Exodus chapter 12:49. The same law applies to the native born and the alien living among you. Be wary of anyone who comes to you saying only need the laws of Noah to abide by. One Torah for all mankind. Beware of anyone who comes to say you only need the laws of the blah, blah, blah. The enemy is very good at masking a lie. The enemy won't tell you a bold lie. He makes the lie look good and appealing. So in essence, there is one Torah for all mankind. Don't be deceived to believe otherwise. And of course, that was once the Old Testament, and that were replaced by the New Testament in the northern kingdom of Ephraim at the disposition of the Judahites, the Babylonian captives. Back in the day when I was first looking into Noachide laws, I found something rather alarming when going to noachide.org. I clicked on number 6 courts of justice. Then I went to number 16 and read the following, that the court is to administer the death penalty by the sword. This is from the website noachide.org, right? That the court is to administer the death penalty by the sword, i.e. decapitation. Now that was the original link to it, okay, on their website. Decapitation. This was easily found on the site. It used to be at the above link, so that's that link. However, that link is now removed. The newly updated site has watered down and concealed all that used to be in the open before. It now says the following. So that was 2022 when that were accessible. And now it says preserve justice, establish a righteous judicial system, a robust and healthy legal system, administrating justice fairly, create a society worthy of, and doesn't even say God, does it? GDs. What's that? Geometry? Yeah. Scottish Rite, speculative masonry? Yeah. Blessings. A Noachide judge, because this has got nothing to do with scripture, and it's got nothing to do with the original Freemasonry. It's a fantasy, ladies and gentlemen. Establish a system of judges, courts and officials to maintain and enforce the law is a far-reaching responsibility. This precept translates the ideals of our personal life into a formal order for society at large. It is the extension and guarantee of all the preceding laws. Bullshit. With a capital B. Note that it doesn't say the name Yahweh, and it doesn't even fully spell out God. However, even though what they make public is watered down, make no mistake, the tip of the sword is still there. Though the link is not made available on the site, it's still there if you dig. Here's the new but hard to find link. Scroll down to number 6, Courts of Justice, then go to number 16, and you'll read that the court is to administer the death penalty by the sword, i.e. decapitation. And they claim it to be a positive mitzvah, 226, Exodus 20, 21:20. The sin shall be surely avenged. Okay? So there's the garbage. Now, I've said decapitation, but first it's a title. But you can see they're setting this shit up for anybody that breaks them 6 laws before it. And who likes chopping heads off? Well, them Saudis, don't they? And who's all over in Dubai over there? It just makes me laugh. And these tables turn all you fucking idiots that left your countries to go and swoon in the sun on a nation built on sand. I hope they televise it, because it will be fun to watch, because it serves you right. Please note, the verse it cites has nothing to do with decapitation, and for what it's worth, as of May 2022, there is no search option on the site anymore. Thus, they make it very hard to find these elements included within these righteous laws. So they're hiding it. According to the Noachide laws, if one believes in Yeshua as the Messiah, then they're guilty of idolatry. To have fuel to the fire, if you speak the name Yahweh, however you say it, you have blasphemed and will be guilty as charged. Your outcome will be decapitation, according to the Noachide laws. Line 16 under the Courts of Justice section. But why should number 16 be a focus? Maybe because of this verse found in Revelation. I saw thrones on which there were seated those who had been given authority to judge. And I saw the souls of those who had been beheaded because of their testimony for Jesus and because of the word of God. They had not worshipped the beast or his image and had not received his mark on their foreheads or their hands. They came to life and reigned with Christ 1,000 years. And for me, that is the civilization that they now claim is Tartarian were utter shit. That was the entire civilization formed on the back of the man and his testament that they've been destroying for at least 2 centuries, even more, across the world. I saw thrones on which they were seated. No, I've read that. Revelation 2:8, the angel of the church of Smyrna. Right, these are the 2 words of him who is the first and the last, who died and came to life again. Know your afflictions and your poverty, yet you are rich. I know the slander of those who say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan, or a synagogue of Satan. Do not be afraid of what you are about to suffer. I tell you, the devil will put some of you in prison to test you, and you will suffer persecution for 10 days. Be faithful, even to the point of death, and I will give you the crown of life. Once the ark comes out, Israel most likely begin enforcing the Noachide laws for all those in Israel. So that's what we have to watch out for first. You know, this is all about securing Israel, the greater Israel, and then they're going to start pushing. And this, of course, is when we can start to see it for ourselves. And then, of course, the next move is to stick it out everywhere else. Thus, the church of Smyrna will begin their suffering for 10 days before the resurrection, as noted above. Thus, the 5th seal for the modern remnant to be completed. Not long after that, the beast system will make its reach around the world. Thus, the Noachide laws will be the universal laws for all to follow who are not Jewish. Anyone who holds to the testimony of Yeshua and pursues the Torah will be eliminated. The Global Anti-Semitism Review Act was signed back on October the 8th, 2004. This act mainly applies to anti-Semitism. In essence, if anyone speaks about the state of Israel in a negative light, that person is considered anti-Semitic. Note the word person. Okay, you're not persons, are you? Article 5 under Section 4 states, instances of propaganda in government and non-government media that attempt to justify or promote racial hatred or incite acts of violence against a Jewish people. This would include anyone who says the Jews were behind the Messiah being crucified is anti-Semitic, even though we know that Semitism is a group of languages and this bunch don't speak Semitism, they speak Yiddish. Even the New Testament scriptures will be considered anti-Semitic writings. Therefore, anyone who pursues the New Testament will be considered guilty. And so Article 5 from the Global Anti-Semitism Review Act, October 8, 2004, said instances of propaganda in government and non-government media that attempt to justify or promote racial hatred or incite acts of violence against Jewish people. Now, can you understand why all social media, all your media outside in La La Land have all shit themselves since 2004 and have gone hard against anybody who speaks the truth? These are the reasons why, because they're all commercial enterprise. Please understand this will be all over the world thanks to the United Nations Genocide Treaty of 1948. This treaty or convention says in Article number 2, causing serious bodily harm or mental harm to members of the group. Okay, is not allowed. Now, the plan is for this Noachide system to remove the United Nations and create a new one. So when you think Trump's going against something that's evil, they're just transferring that power of the United Nations to one run by the Sanhedrin. If one causes another mental harm, like speaking the truth about Yeshua being the true Messiah, they will be guilty. Once implemented, this will be universal no matter where you live, thanks to the United Nations. The Noachide laws are in place as legal action. Through their fringe groups, they are slowly being enforced. Anyone found guilty of breaking them can and will be decapitated, either at title or by physical chop. So don't be surprised to hear about a law going out someday in the future that says all Gentiles found keeping the seventh-day Sabbath will be found guilty of breaking the Noachide law, that they must be punished to the fullest decapitation, or no Gentiles shall be permitted to speak the name of Yahweh. Anyone found doing so has committed blasphemy. They are guilty of breaking the Noachide law and shall be punished to the fullest decapitation. And as this moves forward, remember Revelation 14. This calls for patient endurance on the part of the saints who obey God's commandments and remain faithful to the man. And back in 2019, we see 70 nations come to Israel to renew their commitment to the Noachide laws. Nations invited for animal sacrifice. The world happened to cruelty to animals. You know what I mean? Now, can you see how they're so full of shit? So contradictory, but people miss it. So 6 laws about no cruelty to animals, and they've all then been invited to sacrifice animals. And they think they're smart, these people. And there you go. In conclusion, cease being a coward, man the fuck up and face this reality. This is a time for us to focus, a time for us to get our head in the game and realise that we may be closer than we think to the monsters taking over the asylum for the demented. Brought to you from the leader of the Wise Asylum. There we have it. Now, I know I've gone through it a little bit quick, but anybody that doesn't understand it, doesn't know it, not aware of the Noachide, there's some good information in there for you to get savvy with it, to fully understand it, and rock and roll. Right, let's see if I can... So, he's the bestest teacher, says Jerry. Cheers, Jerry. Does anyone know if there are any tickets available? Blah, blah, blah. Just look, blah, blah, blah. Just look, blah, blah, blah. Okay, no one of the joke names, Sean, Nouveau, Laredo. Thanks, Nouveau. Anglesey being the last place of the Druids, is that correct, Sean? Yes, it was. Because it's copper. It's all copper in Anglesey, and of course it acts as a amplifier and receiver of the higher frequencies. So, yeah, that's why it was the seat of the Druid system on Blighty. The main core being in Ireland. Yeah, absolutely right there. Leafy says, I saw Judah on the west coast of Al-Kabulan inside all maps. Okay. Where's Al-Kabulan, by the way? Nouveau says, all very complicated. I'd never heard of the name Saracens until I visited England, and there's pubs named after them. The Saracens had these types of places. Well, there was a deal done between Richard the Lionheart and Saladin in the Crusades, which is why Christians and Islam came together. However, the Judahites have took over Islam completely, and it's been run by Palavicini. Now, of course, the prophecies are that eventually, when the Christians and the Muslims wake the fuck up and realise they're just working for banks and they're getting bum stupid, that at that point the Christians and Muslims will come together and wipe these bastards off the face of the earth. However, if that doesn't happen, then Islam gets wiped off the face of the earth. Because China's not going to accept the fact that they're not allowed to eat pork, unfortunately. I'm being a little bit flippant there, but you can see how that's going to pan out when Chief Caliph says, "Hey, China, you can't eat the pig, it's disgusting." Well, the biggest consumer of pork by far in this world and the inventor of bacon is China. So they were the ones mopping up the Muslims. So thanks for that, Nouveau. Benefactor Life of the Mix, brilliant presentation, explained in chapter 48:17. Nice one, Benefactor, I knew you'd like that. Nouveau says, hit that thumbs up, best channel in England. Thanks, Nouveau, get that hit. Come on, you buggerlugs. Jerry says, the Scam D had that effect. Yeah, it did. Family division, Benefactor, Heavenly Father versus Holy Father. Yeah, Holy Father being the pontiff, Heavenly Father being that impulse within. Picked up by the pineal gland, which is why they're calcifying it. Jerry says, he told everyone what it was about with the snake poem. Beefy Man says, AI seems to think it's a good idea. Jerry says, Chapatis Maximus. Benefactor, bypassing the legal entity. Yeah. Davina says, sick. Are you pooling? Oh, dear me, Davina. Oh, dear heck. Benefactor, decapitation happened at birth. The cut of the umbilical cord. It did. And Weaverman says, Alkebulan, the original name of Africa. Scipio Africanus defeated Hannibal and renamed it. Alkebulan means Garden of Eden. Well, thank you very much for that, Weefy Man. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, a big thanks to you for joining. Thanks to the mods for modding. And I will take this opportunity to thank Mr. Richard Volz for presenting what I consider to be an excellent piece of work on the when government becomes a corporation. So thanks for that, sir. Much appreciated, and let's hope enough people get to see it and grasp it and understand it, and we can move ever further to removing this shadow system that's overtaken our entire lives with the intention of stealing our estates and our offspring and chopping off our heads. Thanks for joining. We have a good week, chaps and chapesses, and I will say, till the next time.
electronic,